Um, in terms of coming to Japan.
Yeah, definitely that included.
Yeah, well, I would really like to do that, and it's been sort of scheduled 2 times and fallen through, so I don't know when it's going to be possible. But I am supposed to be moving into touring mode from July. At this point, there is not a Japanese section, but I think we are still considering it.
What will that tour entail, the dates?
I think it would be Europe, America, England at this point.
Where in Europe do you usually cover?
Where I like playing is around the Mediterranean.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think somehow I seem to get through better with Mediterranean audiences.
Is that right?
People. But, although things are actually doing well for me in Scandinavia at the moment, so maybe it isn't a rule of thumb. But, so France, Italy, Spain, Portugal, and I was hoping to do Greece, Yugoslavia, and Israel too. I don't know if I can do that or not.
That's a very mixed bag.
Yeah.
What about your own ethnic background?
Well, it's pretty white. I think I'm supposed to come from Spanish descendants, but that will be probably back about 5 or 6 generations.
It's quite interesting. I have a little list of questions here. Somebody wanted you to say a few words about Phil Collins. Work with him recently. Maybe a few words about him as an artist, etc., etc.
Well,
when was the last time you saw him?
Probably about 3 weeks ago or something. I saw him in L.A., and that was the first time that I'd seen him work independent of Genesis. And I was very impressed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was. I think that it was. It's in a more sort of traditional format of music, which is always what he's liked. He's always been an American music fan rather than a European one, I think. And working with the Phoenix Horns and so on, it was a little like seeing a black singer with people getting up in the audience and shouting, "Right on, brother," and a nice percentage of dark faces. So to see him do that and pull it off was great. I think, composition, it's not always my particular thing, but I think he's found his niche and is making it work very well.
Apparently you got together for a one-shot deal to join Genesis once again, I guess, for one concert or so. How did that
benefit for this sort of world music festival that I was involved with lost a pile of money, and they very kindly agreed to work with me on it as a benefit concert to try and fill the hole.
How did that go musically?
It was a bit rough musically because we only had 3 days rehearsal, and it was stuff that I'd mainly been doing about 10 years ago. Well, I think for all of us, because we did quite a lot of old material. It wasn't as polished as it should have been, but the feel was great. I mean, it was a bit like going back to like family reunion. So everyone we'd ever known that had been associated with Genesis was there, and so on a sort of a personal level, it was a nice experience.
Did you do nothing but old Genesis tunes?
I think we did one of mine, but that was all. It was basically because we were asking money from the fans. We tried to give the fans what we imagined they would want in return.
That's very sporting of you. Did it take you back, say, musically? I would imagine it's since leaving Genesis, you've changed quite a bit as a person, musically and otherwise. And then getting back together with the same guys again, did it feel a lot different?
I mean, it felt strange. It felt very familiar and different at the same time. Because obviously, having worked so much with those faces around you on the stage, part of it just feels very natural. And then I think we have all changed quite a bit and aged quite a bit and so on, so that our taste is different and so on, but it didn't matter.
I would imagine, at least, I don't know about the stage, but in the studio you usually work with a sort of powerhouse lineup of studio musicians. How did the Genesis guys stack up with that studio lineup you're usually paired with?
I think that type of comparative stuff doesn't really help anyone. I think that different styles.
Speaking of which, why the studio musicians when you make an album?
I use musicians. I think, the only person really who was at the time I started using them, a regular session player was Tony Levin, who is, a remarkable player and a remarkable man, and he puts in much more commitment than the traditional session relationship. And he suggested Jerry Marotta to me, who had only really worked with Orleans at that point. I mean, he'd done a lot more sessions since then, but at the time I first started working with him, he wasn't sort of an old studio diehard. Similarly, Larry Fast, who'd only, I think, worked with a couple of bands. So when the relationships were begun, it wasn't a sort of tired professional relationship, but something based on, going after a similar goal, I think.
In a recent interview, Tony Levin said he's very unique in that he works with both American and British artists, about 50-50. And he says the thing about British artists is they always demand something new, something novel, whereas the Americans go for the old grooves, the same old licks, and they kind of depend on, the old familiar stuff. Did it feel different Does it feel different working with American musicians?
Partly I did feel there was an American rhythm approach, which I wanted to try strapping onto an English style of songwriting. I'm sorry. Can you just hold again? I'll try and get rid of this other line.
Certainly.
Hello? Hi. Yeah, I'm still on the phone to him. All right. Okay. Yeah. Fine. Hi.
Okay.
I'm here on my own.
we were talking about the difference between American musicians and British musicians.
Yeah, I think maybe the difference is getting reduced now, but there was, say in terms of good English drummers, a lot of them would traditionally be quite decorative, busy, and use a lot of cymbal work, for instance. And I liked more tom work, solid, empty spaces, and that was more often found in American rhythm sections.
You seem to be very concerned with rhythms. I think you mentioned a moment ago that you, in fact, laid down the rhythm tracks at first, and then put the rest of the song over that later.
In terms of composition, I write the rhythm pattern, if you like, first on the rhythm machine, and then put the rest of the music around that. I think, it's partly for me getting back to roots, because I started off as a drummer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh.
So, I think
the tour entail, the dates?
I think it would be Europe, America, England at this point.
Where in Europe do you usually cover?
Where I like playing is around the Mediterranean.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think somehow I seem to get through better. So scheduled 2 times and fallen through, so I don't know when it's going to be possible. But I am supposed to be moving into touring mode from July. At this point, there is not a Japanese section, but I think we are still considering it.
What will that?
In terms of coming to Japan.
Yeah, definitely that included.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would really like to do that, and it's been